Hey, welcome back to another episode of the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom, and today we are talking about having a successful sales conversation. I brought in a guest expert. Her name is Nikki Rausch, and we're talking all things sales, how to sell with confidence, how to get people on the call with you, how to close the sale, how to overcome common objections, how to use NLP, NeuroLinguistic Programming, in the sales conversation, and a lot more. You're going to love this episode. Make sure to take some notes, and we're going to dive right in. Welcome to the She's Making an Impact podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Ngom. I'm an entrepreneur, mom, adventure lover, and creator of Pin with Purpose, the Impact Blogging Academy, and Activate. I went from food stamps and negative $400 in my checking account to a multiple six-figure online business. This is your show to learn from me and other rockstar entrepreneurs how to monetize your passion and live out your purpose. If you're ready to increase your income while making a massive impact on the world, this is the show for you. I'm so pumped you're here. Let's get started. Hey, Nikki, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So why don't we start off, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into doing what you're doing.
So my background is in corporate sales. I have had pretty extensive background as I'm a sales professional by trade, I guess you could say. And so I did that for many years and started my business really just out of this desire to want to do something that was more fulfilling. And I had no idea what that was, but I was studying NeuroLinguistic Programming at the time, in addition to working, and I was a traveling sales rep for many years. And when I started studying NeuroLinguistic Programming, it really helped clarify for me the importance around communication and wanting to be a better communicator. It really helped me in the sales side of what I was doing for my career, but it also improved all the relationships in my life. And so when I kind of decided I needed to do something a little more fulfilling, I didn't know what that was, but I went to help build my NLP teacher's business. I went to work with her for a little while. And my business was kind of born out of meeting entrepreneurs and just being so excited to be around these really passionate people who were doing really cool things, and they were building these really exciting businesses. And I just wanted to spend as much time around them as possible. And the more I got to know some of them, I realized that many of them were really struggling with the sales conversation. And that's the piece that kind of comes natural to me at this point because I've been doing it for so long. So my business was really born out of a few of these people getting some success with things that I was offering to them. And then somebody saying, why don't you build a business around this? So here I am having the time of my life, getting to teach people around the sales conversations.
Okay, cool. So you're teaching sales calls, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm really teaching. So I teach a 5-step approach. It's my signature approach. I call it the selling staircase. And it really talks about what are the things that need to happen in a conversation with a potential client. And that conversation can happen over email or, message. But most of the time, there's some type of actual conversation, some dialogue between you and the client. And so what are you doing during that conversation to move somebody through the selling process? Because I find that a lot of sales trainings out there talk about filling your funnel, which is such an important part of growing your business, but that's a lot of marketing type activities. It doesn't really dig into the conversation. And I find that that's kind of where people get stuck is they're like, okay, so I have this lead, but what should I say? Or what should I do next?
So what should you say and what should you do?
Well, a couple things. So if we start on the selling staircase, the 5 steps in them, the first is that introduction step. And that could happen as a result of your marketing efforts, right? Like they get introduced to you in some way. There's some part of them. And in your ad, even in your ad, you could even do step 2. And I'm just saying that from a conversation standpoint, because I'm thinking about what you do specifically, Rachel. I've been kind of stalking you online a little bit.
Nice.
and checking out your stuff, which is amazing, by the way. And so, step 2 in the selling staircase is creating curiosity. So we want to create curiosity that draws people in. Now, if that's a face-to-face conversation, there's some very specific things to do. One is, how do you answer questions when people start asking you questions. And they can be everyday simple questions too. It could be something like, hey, how are you? And, most of us get asked that question a few times a week or day, right? Like it happens so often. And I want people to stop having the fine or I'm good type answer. I want you to have an answer that tests the waters to create some curiosity to see, is this an ideal client, or is this a potential client or not? So have a response that allows them to follow up with another question. So for instance, if somebody asks me right now, like, hey, Nikki, how are you? I might say, oh, I'm great. I'm just about to start I'm just about starting to teach my next master class. It starts on Thursday. Now that allows for somebody to go, oh, well, what's your master class about? Or like, what do you do? Or what does that mean? They might just go, oh, that's nice. What do you think about you know, the show last night or whatever? They could totally change the subject, which is fine. But oftentimes it'll spur them to ask me a question about whatever it is I commented on. And now I have a little bit of permission to talk a little bit about what I do. And then that gives them the opportunity to go, oh, gosh, that's so interesting. I could probably use some help with that. Well, then we're going to invite them to step 3 in the process, which is the discovery.
So what do you do in the discovery process?
So what you do in the discovery, there's a couple things. One is you want to make sure that the questions that you're asking during the discovery should lead people to hiring you. So oftentimes people get into a discovery call with client and they want to demonstrate their expertise, so they coach or they give advice. And that's a mistake. And the reason it's a mistake is because oftentimes, you know so much, you have such an extensive background, and everybody who gets their client into that discovery, like, you're an expert. And sometimes the things that come really easy for us, we know, like, I know so many things I could give this person, so I'm just going to give them one little nugget to try to like impress them or try to make them go like, "Ooh, this is so good, I want more." But oftentimes what you do, I always say, it's like giving somebody a piece of, like, a grain of sand, knowing that behind you, when they hire you, they get access to the full beach, but they don't know what you know. And so they don't see the beach behind you. They see that one grain of sand and they think that is the beach. And therefore, they don't think they need to hire you.
Yeah.
And so instead, make sure that you're asking questions that lead to hiring you without coaching, without giving advice, without giving people something for free. Because the other thing is people won't value it, and they often won't implement it. And because they don't implement it, they won't think your stuff works.
So what are some of those questions you would ask?
So they are specific to the type of business that you do. So for instance, I'm going to ask somebody in a discovery call, like, are you able to create curiosity when you're talking about your products and services? Because guess what? I teach creating curiosity. I might also ask, are you able to weave storytelling into your sales pitch? Because I teach storytelling for business. So I'm not going to ask questions like, um, what CRM are you using? Because I don't care.
Right.
That's completely irrelevant to what I do and what I teach. So make sure that the questions, even though, like, a lot of times we want to ask people, the other thing, which is a mistake, questions that people make, or they'll ask people these big questions that don't really have anything to do with hiring them. Like, where do you want to be in 10 years? Who do you want there with you? What are your biggest dreams and goals? I don't need to know any of that for someone to decide to hire me. It's not that those things aren't relevant. It's not that those things aren't important, but you don't need to know that in your discovery. You need to know, do they have a need? Am I able to solve it?
Okay. So just questions based off of those things.
Yeah, the questions that are the things that are your expertise, form some questions around those. Now, I will say, if just for a couple like specific questions, one of my favorite questions to ask somebody is, what's important to you right now in regards to, and then you can insert your contact. So for me, I might say, what's important to you right now about growing your sales?
Hmm.
Because the answer to that question might be very relevant when I go to the proposal step, which is step 4, because I need that information in order to recommend something based on, like, what's important to them.
So what happens in the proposal step?
So the proposal step, when you've done a really clear, great discovery and you understand that, okay, they have a need. They have something that I can support them with. So now when I get to the proposal, one of the things I'm going to do before I actually start going into a proposal is I'm going to ask permission to go there. So the way I would frame that is I would say, based on what you've shared with me so far, I do see a key area that we could work together on. Are you interested in learning more about that? And I'm going to have them, most of the time they're going to say yes. Frankly, if they say no, there's no point in like continuing that conversation, right?
Yeah.
So let's get the yes from them. And then I'm going to lay out my recommendation for them. And one of the key things about this is I'm going to recommend what I know they need, not what I think they can afford. One of the mistakes I think oftentimes that happens in the selling process is we make judgments and decisions about what people will be willing to spend with us. And unless they've come right out and said, like, here's my budget, or I'm only willing to invest this amount of money, I'm going to recommend what they need, not what I think they can afford, because my job is to be the expert and give them something that's going to meet the need or the want or the desire that they've shared in the discovery.
Okay. And then what would be the fifth step?
So the fifth step is the close. So once you've laid out your offer, you're going to issue close language. And close language could come up, and there's a few ways to frame it. One of the things I might say to somebody is, so here's my recommendation for you. And then I'm going to issue close language, which would be something like, is that something you'd like to move forward with? And then I'm going to zip it and I'm going to wait and see what they say next. I'm not allowed to speak once I've issued close language until the client responds.
At this point, do they know what the price is?
Oftentimes, yes. Also, although sometimes I don't bring up price on a discovery call unless the client, or during a proposal unless the client does. Like if you're going through the steps and it's in one call, maybe we've done the discovery and now we've moved to the proposal and we're on the same call, I wouldn't bring up price unless the client brings it up. And the reason for that is because if I start making it about price, then they start making it about price. If they ask me for my price, I give it. And I'm really transparent when it comes to pricing. My pricing is on my website. I believe strongly that clients should be able to understand before they get on the call with you what kind of like set that bar for them, give them some type of expectation if they choose to go and look at it. Because the last thing you want to do is pretend like you're embarrassed about your price or that you're trying to hide the price. I was recently on a call where I was in the position of being a client and I asked somebody, what's the price? And her response was, well, we'll get to that. And then she asked me some more questions and she lost my sale right there. I was like, I'm not giving my money to somebody who can't answer that question.
Interesting. Okay. So when they get on the call, they're already pretty familiar with the pricing and what you have to offer.
Maybe. Or if they said, like, let's say I say, based on everything we talked about, my recommendation would be for us to do a VIP package. And this is what's included in the VIP package. Is that something you'd be interested in? And then she says, what's the price? So I'm going to give the price and then I'm going to issue another invitation. I would say, VIP package with me is this. Does that sound like something you'd like to move forward with?
And what if they say no? Then what would you do?
If they say no, I would so if they say no, I'm going to do two things. One is I'm going to ask myself, like, did I miss a step somewhere? Like, is there something I missed that would cause them to say no at this point? Or did I rush? Like, did I skip through steps? Because if you skip steps in the selling process, you're more likely to get no's. Or if I'm like really surprised by the no, then I would say, is it okay to ask your reason for declining? And I would see what they say to that. Or if they just say like, I'd really like to do this, Nikki, but I just don't have that in my budget. Then I might say, are you interested in hearing about less expensive options? Because maybe there's something else that they could do with me, but it's not going to get them exactly what they're saying they want. I would ask that. Or if it's just a straight up like, thanks, no thanks, then I bless and release those people. I say, I so appreciated having this conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time. And if at any point you change your mind in the future, please know you're welcome to come back and I'll be happy to hear from you.
Okay. What are some common objections that you get and how do you handle them?
So common objection sometimes is price, right? That's usually the common objection. One of the ways that I handle the price objection is I do offer a payment plan. So I might say in that moment, if they're like, oh, I'd really like to do this, but I just don't have that in my budget, then I would say, I offer a payment plan. If that's something you'd like to talk about, let me know. I don't like launch into the payment plan because if I launch into the payment plan without them saying yes, they want to hear about it, then it sounds like I'm trying to convince them to buy, and I'm not. Like my job is not to convince people to buy from me. My job is to lay it out clear, make it super easy for them to say yes, but not try to convince anybody. Because frankly, in this day and age, none of us want to be convinced of anything.
Hmm. How would you handle when someone says, I need to speak with my husband?
I love that question. When somebody says I need to, speak to my husband, I always say, great. About like, when do you think you'll have that conversation with him? Is there any additional information that I can provide that would make it easy for you to have that talk? And should we go ahead and schedule a circle back call now? That way, you have that conversation, you and I get back on the phone and we're able to answer any additional questions that come up as a result and or decide on next best steps for us. Like, how about Thursday at 10? And then I actually schedule a time to do a circle back call with them on my calendar and get it on their calendar. Because this gives them some like a timeline essentially to have the conversation and like move that ball forward if that's the way they want to go.
Got it.
Yeah.
How, when people are getting on the call, how do you identify people that you're like right away, basically, yes, I could help them, or people that are never going to buy?
One of the ways that I do that is to get on the phone with me. There's kind of two ways that anybody could even get on the phone with me. You can do a selling strength assessment, which is kind of that's my version of a consultation. It's structured so that I'm asking very specific questions. Again, the questions that lead people to hiring me. And so I can identify in usually about 15 minutes whether or not this is a potential client or not. So my selling strength assessments are like 30 minutes or less always because I don't want to spend a bunch of time and waste people's time and I don't want to waste my time if this is not a good fit for me.
Definitely.
So that's one way someone can get on the call with me. Or if somebody is like, I'm ready to hire you and I just need to ask you some questions about your different offerings. Well, that's a totally different conversation.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you mentioned neurolinguistic programming. What is that for people that don't know, and how do you incorporate that into sales?
So neurolinguistic programming, so the neuro part of it stands for the way we process information in our brains. Linguistics is the language. So how you speak to others, how they speak to you, also any internal dialogue you've got going on. And then programming is about habits and patterns. And when you're able to recognize your own habits and patterns, as well as the person you're in conversation with, it allows for you to start adding some flexibility to your behavior. So, NLP, really, in the most basic terms, is the study of communication. And my goal always is to have the most flexibility in a conversation because the person who has the most flexibility in any conversation has the most influence. So my job is to put the client at ease, and that means I will adjust my style to their style. That doesn't mean not being authentic. It just means do everything you can to put them at ease. And one example of this, for instance, would be how I incorporate this into sales and some of the stuff that I teach with my clients is I always pay attention to the person I'm in conversation. I pay attention to their rate of speech
Hmm.
and I will adjust my rate of speech to more like closely match theirs. So if there's somebody who really takes their time when they're speaking, I'm going to slow down. And if there's somebody who talks really, really fast and this is their style, it would annoy them if I talk really slow. So I'm going to speed up a little bit. I'm going to make it really easy for them to stay in conversation. That's just one example.
That's a good example. I have such a hard time with slow speakers. I'm like, come on, come on. I would have a hard time like slowing down my speech to match theirs.
Yeah, well, here's a little tip around that though, is that you only have to slow down for a little bit, because what will happen is once somebody feels comfortable with you, they'll start adjusting to you as well. And then you'll find a happy medium. So it won't be like you're like, okay, let's talk about, and like, I think you're already like, speed it up, lady.
I
That's
know, come
way too slow.
on.
Yeah. But if you're just willing to do that, sometimes you can do it just in a sentence or two, or sometimes you might do it for a minute or two. But oftentimes what will happen is that other person, it sends the message of like, oh, Rachel's like me. Rachel will, it's easy to be in conversation with Rachel. And then they'll start to adjust to you, and you can like speed up a little bit, and they'll kind of come along with you. It's actually, it's known as pacing and leading
Mhm.
in NLP. And so you got to pace, you always have to pace the other person first in order to step in and take the lead. But once you do step in and take the lead and they start adjusting to you, like now, this, like, you guys are in sync. This is a really good thing. And, three things happen when you get in sync with a client. They will be more open to hearing your message. They'll stay in conversation with you longer. And the third thing is they'll be more revealing about how to earn their business, because we all want to do business with people that we know, like, and trust. And we want to make sure that the people that we give our money to have some invested interest in us in some way and make us feel really comfortable and good to be around. So this is an advantage to being willing to adjust to the other person, even if it feels super uncomfortable. Now, you do have to decide as a coach, especially as a coach, if you're going to work with a client who's going to drive you nuts because their style is so different than you, you've got to decide, like, do I want to take this client on?
For sure. What are some other NLP strategies?
Some other NLP strategies are around the way that you frame your messaging. So, for instance, there's something known as embedded commands. I love embedded commands. Embedded commands are like when you're issuing invitations and the way that you would say something. So instead of saying, like, is this something, let me think about, like, oftentimes people say, like, uh, do you want to move forward? Right? That's a pretty direct question. Whereas I might say to somebody, based on what we've talked about, is this something you're ready to move forward with right now?
Hmm.
The right now is an embedded command. It's saying make a decision.
Hmm. Ooh, it's like so subtle. But
Yeah.
when you like point it out, I'm like, oh, okay. I see what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is subtle. And because it's not supposed to it's not meant to try to manipulate anybody. It's not meant to try to be like schmarmy in any way. It really is about making it easy for people to kind of take next steps. And oftentimes, people won't make a decision until you issue an invitation, and people won't know what to do next unless you tell them.
Hmm.
Like, we all want to work with people who are really good at what they do. Like, I only want to give my money to people who are going to like deliver and be phenomenal at what they do. So your job is to demonstrate that you are phenomenal. And this is why it's so important that even if you hate sales, or even if you feel like you suck at sales, which are the things people tell me all the time, you still need to be proficient at it, because it's a way to demonstrate to somebody, like, I'm your expert, I can help you, and I'm going to take care of you in this process.
Hmm. What would you say to someone that says they hate sales or they're struggling with confidence when it comes to having that sales conversation?
Usually what I say to somebody who says I hate sales is kind of what I just said. Like, I understand that you hate it. And if I could show you a way that would allow for it to be more about the relationship you have with the other person, and you would be confident because you know where you are every step of the process and you know what to say, is that something you'd be willing to invest in?
Hmm.
Because that's what I teach.
Hmm. What if they're just not confident when they get on that call?
Some of it is learning, learning what you should be saying and what to do. And so this is why I do what I do. I have a membership program where people can come in and post questions to me every day. So I get these questions. They're like, I'm just about to get on a call with a client and I'm feeling, I'm not feeling great. One of the things I teach is around state management and managing your internal state before you get on the call. Because if you're too worried or nervous and you haven't done anything to manage your internal state, oftentimes that will come across in the conversation. And so state management is crucial to somebody's success. And that just means and I do teach a process around it, but it is a way of like setting aside anything that you think is all about you. Like if you go into a call going like, I wonder what they're going to think about me and I really need this sale and what if I make a mistake? Then of course you don't feel confident. But if you're able to set that aside and go, actually I'm going into this conversation to find out what's important to this person. How can I offer them something of real value? How
Mm.
can I make their life better in some way? And showing up from being of service, then it gets a little bit easier. I always say sales really isn't about you, it's about the other person and putting them
Yes.
at ease.
Yes. I always like try to get in that conversation thinking, how can I serve? Not how
Yes.
can I sell? Because sometimes they're not even going to be a good fit for what I have to offer. And I might be able to recommend them something else. And so I've sent people like away and I'm like, I'm not ready. Like, you're not ready for me yet, but you should go to Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within. Like, you need to go to this event. And that will put you in the right frame of mind. And then we can work together.
Yeah.
You know, Cool. What are some things? So you have them like obviously frame their mind, but do you have them do anything else with state management? So I know for me, I like listen to music and I'll like, especially when I do a webinar, which is like a different kind of sales, but I'll like do it, like have a little dance party and listen to the Greatest Showman.
That's perfect.
I know.
So I do teach a process. It's an NLP process. It's known as the NLP mandala. And my clients often do this and report back to me how often they use it and how often they teach it to others. So it's a 4-step process. And I don't know how much time we have. So you tell me if you want me to dig into this or just tell you that
Do
I do
it.
have a
No, do
process.
it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to teach it. So just to give a little background around it, it's something that is you can do it really quickly, although when you're first learning it, it might take a little bit more time because you do need to learn how to access certain states within your body. Like you have to bring like what does it feel like when you are experiencing this? And just to give you an idea, like our minds are so powerful that sometimes all we have to do is think about something for us to have some type of a physical response. So here's an example. This is not the NLP mandala, but just to demonstrate how powerful your minds are. Everybody listening, imagine that I hand you a big juicy slice of lemon. And right in front of you, you've got this big juicy slice. Like you can even see the juice is like dripping out of it. And I ask you to put it in your mouth and bite down and suck that juice. Like suck it. Can you already feel it in your like jaw?
My
It's
mouth
like,
is totally like puckered up.
yeah. So that's how powerful your mind is. All we have to do is talk about something. None of us have a lemon in front of us, right? But we can feel it in our body. So it's the same experience that I want you to go in when I give you these 4 statements that you're going to say to yourself. And by the way, if you don't like these 4 statements, change them. I'm going to teach it to you the way that I learned it and the way that I teach it to my clients. Sometimes my clients adjust it a little bit to feel more comfortable for like their style. But the idea is the first thing you want to say to yourself is, I'm glad I'm here. Now, you can't just say it, you have to feel it in your body. So, what does it feel like when you are glad to be somewhere? Like, think about the people in your life you like to spend time around or something you like to do, if it's hiking or if it's travel or whatever it is. But what does it feel like when you are so glad to be somewhere? Feel that in your body. And as soon as you can access that state, we're going to add the next one, which is, I'm glad you're here. Think about the person that you're going to be meeting with. And what does it feel like when you're showing up to meet with somebody that you really like, that you're so glad to spend time with? And maybe you need to imagine your best friend, or maybe you need to imagine, your significant other. For me, oftentimes I imagine one of my nieces or my nephew. Like, I just love spending time with them. And I know what it feels like in my body when I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you're here. So that's the second thing. And then the third statement is, I know what I know. And this is your power statement. This is what does it feel like when you are confident? Like, you don't have to know everything, but you do know what you know, and you are an expert. And what does it feel like when you are confident? What's it feel like in your body? So say, I know what I know. And then the fourth one is, I care about you. How do you feel when you really legitimately care about somebody's success, about somebody having something that's going to make a difference in their life? So those are the 4 statements. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad you're here. I know what I know, and I care about you. And I've been doing this for years. I did it actually before you and I got on the call. Like, I do it before every podcast interview. I do it before every client interaction. I do it before every class. I do it before I have lunch with my mother. Like, I just do this all the time to access that state. And now, because I've been doing it for so long, I really only have to say it one time. But sometimes if I'm not in a really good state, like, I have to go through it a few times
Yeah.
and feel what it feels like in my body. So that's really one of the key things about accessing state management, is going into it like, I'm so glad I'm here. I'm so glad you're here. Like, I really do know what I know, and I care about you. Like, what a great way to start a conversation with somebody.
That's huge. That's super powerful, as opposed to just showing up and being like, well, I hope they buy today.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Yeah, exactly.
How are most people sabotaging their sales?
Most people are sabotaging their sales because they're skipping steps in the process. They're going right from introduction to the close, or they don't do a well done discovery, or they're selling during the discovery. They're muddying the waters between proposal and discovery. So by skipping steps, you confuse your clients. You often will cause them to go into like overwhelm, or it'll cause them to go look for someone else to buy from. So this is why it's so important that you really do understand, where am I in the conversation and what should I be doing and saying next?
Hmm. I love it. What's the best book you've read?
Oh, the best book I've read.
Can we do one that's like a good sales book, and then one just anything that you
The
love?
Go Giver, I think, is a really great sales book.
Hmm.
One of my other favorite books that I read, I think I read this last year or the year before, called Uncopyable. Uncopyable, I think. And he talks about stealing genius. I should know his name. I'm not very good with authors' names, like when I read the book. But it's got an orange cover. I know what it looks like. I can picture the book, and it's kind of uncopyable. It is such a brilliant book. I do recommend it. As a matter of fact, I even got together with some of my really good like business girlfriends, and we did a day where we talked about stealing genius for our own businesses. It's so great. So I do recommend that.
Just added it to my list.
Oh, good.
Awesome. What does it mean to you to make an impact?
It means that I am doing what I'm supposed to do in the world. I feel like it's my, this is my purpose. This is what I'm here to do, is make an impact and leave. I would say I want to leave people in a better place than I found them.
I like that. Where can we connect with you?
You can connect with me on my website, and I actually have a free download. Like, it's a gift for your audience. So this is a great place. You can connect with me here, but you can also get something. So I have a book called Closing the Sale. It's an ebook, and you can download it as my gift. Go to my website, which is yoursalesmaven.com/impact for your listeners. So yoursalesmaven.com/impact. So you'll find me there, and information about me and what I do. And you can also find me on social media, of course. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram, all under Nikki Roush or Your Sales Maven.
Love it. Any last words of wisdom?
Yes. Here's what I'm going to say to every single person. The way to increase your sales is to start issuing invitations. Invite people to work with you. Invite them to move to the next step in the process with you. Most people won't decide to hire you until you've issued that invitation.
Love it. Thank you so much, Nikki, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel.